You know, just because that new Studio Series Bumblebee movie is coming out doesn't mean it's going to be better than me, right? Says the figure with improper leg posture. Speak for yourself. What's going on, everybody? Republic Cinema here, and in this video, we're gonna be taking a look at a masterpiece MPM movie toy for the first time. I figured it's time to do a review of one of these guys. Yeah, they have a pretty complex transformation, we'll get to that later, but that doesn't mean not to do a review of one. So far, I only have 2 MPM figures. We're just going to start off with this guy and we'll talk about the other one in the next video, hopefully. But before I start off, I would like to talk about the backstory on how I got this figure, because I'm not that kind of guy to get masterpiece figures since they're kind of expensive. This one I made an exception for because I was lucky enough to pick it up for half off, which simply means he originally costed 80 bucks, but I was lucky enough to get him on clearance for 40. And in case you're wondering why it appears a little broken, well, I did have this figure for 3 years so far, and after transforming it back and forth a few times, there has been some breakages in some parts, some odd parts. But yeah, so far this was my only masterpiece movie toy for a long time. Well, at least that wasn't until I got one recently. But anyways, enough talk. Before we take a look at the figure, let's take a quick look at the packaging. So, since I've had the packaging for roughly 3 years, I have moved it around back and forth, so that's why it kind of looks a little scuffed and creased. I'm not gonna lie, but it reminds me of an unopened old vintage kind of toy from the 80s. But anyways, on the front, you get a shot of the figure in robot and alt mode form, along with a bunch of words, names, and logos, one of them being licensed. And as you can see, I have actually kept the old clearance stamp. That's just in case for those of you who don't believe me that I actually got this for half off. On the top is the Transformers Masterpiece Movie Series logo, and on the bottom is nothing. On one side you get a shot of Bumblebee and his alt mode, just a little zoomed in I suppose. And on the other side is the artwork of Bumblebee in his alt mode form. And then on the back you get a little more info on what you get inside the packaging, such as articulated hands, some accessories, and a hidden missile bay feature. And yeah, that's pretty much it for the packaging. Now moving on to the figure. So starting off, painting and sculpting is okay. It's okay. Again, it's kind of based off of the original Studio Series Bumblebee movie Bumblebee, which is based off of early concept art, which is based off of the Bayverse version of what Bumblebee was supposed to look like back then. Well, at least before the events of the very first Bayverse movie. But nonetheless, it still looks cool. The only major paint variations I'm seeing are the yellow, black, gray, and you get a little hints of blue located on the eyes and the doors, and some silver. Oh, and the head sculpt looks nice. Would have looked better if it was in one piece. Now, for the kibble, well, as you can see, the wings are folded in, kind of replicating how Bayverse Bumblebee would fold in his wings. And then, of course, there's this big backpack, which I'd say folds in better than the original Studio Series 18 Bumblebee. And then you get this, and this. Although, let's be honest, this folds in slightly better than the SS-18 Bumblebee. The back arm kibble, however, whilst it does tab onto a tab located somewhere around the arms, it does find itself tabbed off whenever you mess around with this guy too much. Oh, and that back kibble doesn't necessarily do a good job staying hidden behind the back, because it kind of sticks out. And the quality for my copy, well, despite it being out of the packaging for 3 years, I'd say overall it's still fine. I haven't necessarily messed around with this guy much until recently because I was preparing for this video. And by preparing for this video, I mean memorizing all the transformation steps. Give it a nice shake and the legs do flop around. But that doesn't mean they are that loose. I mean, if you leave it, okay, never mind. I mean, at least the arms are okay. And the head isn't as loose as I thought it would be, because I have taken his head apart before. But other than that, despite some parts of the quality wearing off, I'd say he still holds up fairly well. But anyways, I think it's time we move on to accessories. So starting off with his iconic stinger cannon, it does look a little cool. There are some parts that are super detailed, and then there are some parts that are used for tabbing in onto other things, which kind of stick out, but it's not too bothersome, especially when you plug it onto the hand, which at first does require some fingers to be spread out and a thumb to be folded in. Just make sure those 3 fingers going onto that slot, as well as this thumb going right onto that gap right there, and then close that in. And there you have Bumblebee equipped with his stinger cannon, which is unfortunately not 5mm blast effect compatible, But then he also comes with this nice looking sword, despite it being inaccurate, since the blade is supposed to be more of a little more sloped on the front than triangulated, if that's the right way to describe this blade. This one's easier to plug it onto the arm. There is this tab that will peg it onto that slot, and just like that, here you have Bumblebee with his sword. You could also have the sword on the bottom of the gun, which I suppose would serve as a bayonet, but there's not much sword sticking out. I mean, there's a considerable amount. It's just the bayonet doesn't look capable of doing a one-and-done stab. And then here we have Bumblebee's battle mask, which you will have to replace this extra, well, at least for my copy, a broken normal headpiece for the battle mask, which simply goes over there, and he pushes the whole piece down, and there you go. Now, despite him being fully equipped, I wouldn't say he would be armed to the teeth just yet, as he does come with this really cool feature where you slide both of his side chest pieces upwards and it reveals a missile compartment. I have watched the Bumblebee movie recently, and I do remember Charlie removing that one front chest piece out to see what was wrong with Bumblebee, and imagine she sees that instead of a severed inside chest part. Even Bumblebee would have been flabbergasted if he saw that, since, well, he did get his memory knocked out. I'm curious to know if that's the reason why they didn't make it to the final cut. And if you're wondering what weapon storage looks like, here you go. The slots on the bottom wings serve as a port for the major weapons, whereas the dangerous clear plastic tabs serve as forehead accessory storage, which I guess is the best way of calling it. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the accessories. Now moving on to articulation, which can get excessive. The head is simply on a ball joint, which does allow the head to look upwards and downwards, and rotate 360. I suppose the wings count as articulation. Same thing for the wheel wings, which can also move upwards and downwards, but I think that's primarily used for transformation. Full rotation at the arm, kind of. Shoulder pad moves out, bend at the shoulder, elbow swivel, bend at the elbow, wrist swivel. The wrist is also on a upwards and downwards movement, a tight one at that. And the thumb can move independently, same thing with the other part of the thumb. And also same thing for the finger, which also has an extra movement as well. The other two fingers move independently, they just don't have an extra hinge joint on the tip of their fingers, kind of like the thumb and the index. But anyways, waist swivel, legs can spread, leg can move forward, can also move backwards. It's also on a ratchet joint. Thigh swivel, double jointed knees. The foot can rock from side to side, and the front of the foot can move up and down, which is actually made of die-cast metal parts. Uh-oh, I just realized I've gone far into this Reviewdeo without mentioning the die-cast metal pieces, but let's do that now. There's of course the die-cast metal located on the front of the foot, and on the top of the foot, on the side of the foot, on the bottom of the shoulder, and of course the missiles are also made of die-cast metal parts as well, or whatever type of metal or alloy that's made of, as I'm uncertain if all metallic-ish toys are made of die-cast metal parts or might be made out of some other metal-ish material. But anyways, if I forgot any other parts of this figure that also have die-cast metal parts, be sure to let me know in the comments down below. But anyways, it's now time for size comparison. Starting off, here he is next to the Studio Series 18 Bumblebee movie Bumblebee, which will be getting a remold next year. The Studio Series Clunker Bumblebee, which is basically 18 Bumblebee, just with weathered parts and no paint on the feet. Jeep B, B127, Buzzworthy B127, Rise of the Beasts Bumblebee, SS 86 Bumblebee, YOLO Park Rise of the Beasts Bumblebee, and then for some Autobots, here he is next to Optimus Prime, Cliffjumper, Brawn, Wheeljack, Ratchet, Ironhide, RC, Sunstreaker, Blitzwing, Shabby Dropkick, Shabby Shatter, Not So Shabby Dropkick, and lastly, Not So Shabby Shatter. And one more thing, but here he is next to all the other Bumblebee movie Bumblebees, or at least the Studio Series ones. With that remold of the VW Bumblebee could probably follow a remold of the B127 later in the future. But is that mold really that bad? I mean, yes, it's pretty kibbly, but I kind of like that toy. But despite that, a remold would be great nonetheless. Let me know in the comments which version of Bumblebee from the Bumblebee movie is your favorite. And now we get to the juicy side of reviewing a masterpiece movie toy, that being the transformation, of course, which is complex, but I think I've transformed him quite enough to memorize the whole thing. And let me tell you, this one's not pretty. I'm saying that now as I have not transformed Starscream, Blackout, Bone Crusher, or Brawl, which those ones are probably more difficult to transform. But I suppose the best place to start off with would be the windows, as all you're going to do is just spread this whole piece out, move this piece outwards like so, and make sure that it tabs in right there, and completely straighten that part right there, and then push this down. Same thing for the other side, and then after that you're going to want to open this whole thing out and move this panel out like so, and just leave it there for now. And then next we're going to work on the legs, but before you do, just move the arms out. So starting off, you're just going to want to flip this die-cast metal section upwards, open that as well, and then leave this out like so. Push that in, push this up as well, and I think right about now you can close this in and then unfold this whole back kibble. And then what you're going to do next is try to move all of this outwards like so, flip the wheel outwards, and then you're going to want to fold this whole section in right here. You're just going to have to move this out as well, go ahead and close everything right there. Push that all the way down, push the front part of the foot down as well, and then fold in the heel. Same thing for the other side, and then after that you're just going to want to go ahead and close this whole piece inwards like so, and then after that tab everything in together. Not sure why these two tabs aren't tabbing in. Just tab in, please. Thank you, and then tab that in as well, and then leave this back piece out like so. Okay, next we're going to work with the arms. You're going to untab this back piece right here, which you might as well end up mangling the arm as you do so because of how tight that tab is. Leave it out all the way, rotate this as well, make sure all the fingers are folded in like this, and then push the whole hand all the way down, and then move it upwards and leave it there for now. Same thing for the other arm. Next you're going to want to untab this whole section and then move this whole piece down, and then leave it right there, and then close that black piece all the way in, and make sure that this piece taps onto that little slot right there. Just make sure at the same time the hand is closed in right there. You do the same thing for the other side, just make sure that both of them are tabbed in together, as there will be a tab and a slot that connect both folded in arms somewhere around this section. And then after that we work on the head moving out and this whole piece closing in, whilst at the same time tabbing onto these pieces right here. So starting off, what you will do is leave this out right around there, unfold the front bumper as well, and then leave it out like so. Move the chest pieces up, and then fold in these gray pieces like so. After that, untab this whole section in, and once you have it right around there, you're going to close the head and push this whole thing in. And then when you push this down, don't push it down all the way in, as you're moving it down to where it's supposed to be, you're also going to want to have these tabbed in at the same time, and then close this whole thing in. After that, you're going to want to move this whole section down and then push it inwards like so. And then you're going to want to close this whole piece in. Same thing for the other side. And then we come back over here. You're going to want to bring this whole section down like so, whilst at the same time straightening the back. But anyways, you make sure you leave it down like that. Anyways, you fold this wheel in. And then this part is really tricky, but what you will have to do is make sure that that tabs in all together like so. There's a lot of tabs that need to join in with the slots. You do the same thing for the other side. And lastly, if you haven't heard enough this and that's throughout this whole transformation, you're going to go ahead and close in this whole assembly onto those slots right there. Basically just collapse the whole top. And here we have the Masterpiece MPM-BBM Bumblebee in his Beetle mode. Now, despite the vehicle's robot mode being a little inaccurate to the animation model used in the movie, the alt mode does look really clean. Despite that rather frustrating transformation, you are left with something to be impressed by. However, some tabs didn't want to tab in 100% during the transformation. As I was saying, the painting and sculpting is pretty good. The wheels are nicely painted. I don't know if the clear plastic blue is accurate, but either way it looks alright. And even the lights also have clear plastic red parts, whereas the headlights on the front are not made of die-cast metal, but rather painted in this silver-ish paint. And I believe the only robot mode parts that are exposed would be these gray pieces right here. Other than that, there's not much else that is a little exposed, other than this, I guess, and this. And for weapon storage, one second. And that would be the weapon storage for the alt mode, which I think the Studio Series 1 handled that a little better. And for whatever reason, this black piece right here that the alternate head piece tabs in onto does not do a good job holding that piece in, as it is more subject to pop off real easily. But yeah, that's weapon storage for this figure. For a brief comparison, here he is alongside the Studio Series Bumblebee and the Studio Series Bumblebee movie Optimus Prime. And then here he is alongside both the Volkswagen Bumblebee and the Studio Series 38 Optimus Prime. But yeah, that's just to show you how big the Masterpiece movie figures alt modes are compared to the Studio Series movie figures alt modes, and I guess it does get a bit excessive. But anyways, be sure to let me know in the comments which branch of Transformers did the Volkswagen alt mode a little bit better. And I think that's pretty much it. I think that's all I had to say for this guy. Overall, he's a bit of a kibbly Masterpiece MPM figure, but overall he's alright. I wouldn't necessarily recommend picking this figure up as he is quite expensive now. I suppose it's best to just wait for a reissue, although I think the time he was reissued was around 2021 because he came out before. I want to say his initial release would have been right around the time the Bumblebee movie came out, which was December of 2018. But anyways, if you're looking to pick this figure up, he is going to go for a pretty penny. And in all honesty, I think it's just best to wait for the remold of the Studio Series Bumblebee movie Bumblebee, because that one overall is going to be the most accurate, especially since the wings on the back can fold downwards. The Masterpiece version and the original Studio Series 18 version cannot do that. So overall, it's just best to wait for SS 117. But anyways, let me know in the comments what you guys think of this figure and if you already own him. And with that being said, if you like what you saw in this video, be sure to slam that like button, share this with your friends as well, turn on post notifications so that way you don't miss another upload. Let me know how I did in this video, and most importantly, be sure to hit that big red subscribe button. And yeah, that's pretty much it. Thank you very much for watching. Teo!